So we are standing in the middle of a very big science experiment. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of the show, and then we'll kind of walk through the different elements of it, which are still in progress. But the next time you see them, it'll look like a well-oiled machine. So Pinar Yoldas is a professor at UCSD. She's originally from Turkey. She has a background in architecture, and she has a master's in architecture, an MFA, and also a PhD from the Art and Neuroscience program at Duke. And so she works in the space of speculative design, which is essentially sort of an extra creative way of facing contemporary problems, right? Problems that design can help to solve. And so, she's very conscious of how every material, every color, every texture, every pattern that we interact with is having an effect on our experience of the world in that moment. And so that's something that she brings to her work. It sounds like someone might be knocking at the door. No? Okay. Thanks, Carla. I'm like, is it Pinar? I don't know. And because of this background in neuroscience, she's very sort of keenly aware of the different sensory experiences that she wants to create through her work. And of course, she knows, you can't engineer everybody's experience. There's always going to be unpredictable, reactions to things, but she's kind of doing as much as she can to create the kind of experience she wants her viewers to have. So there are different sort of stops kind of in this show, and the idea is that we've sort of entered Yoldas Labs, which is what she calls her studio. And so this first piece is a pendulum, and it may be out of water, but basically this is it's an aroma. It's a pendulum with a vaporizer in it, and so we will watch out, everyone. We have to we're going to carve out our little safe space here. Hello. So we'll demarcate on the floor kind of where people need to stand, and this will require some activation by only ICA affiliated people. So once we kind of get this all set up, do we have another person introduce? Yay! Hi, Cal. Yes, so I think that if you're volunteering here in Central, you may be one of the chosen few that gets to push the pendulum. But it does work. It's probably just out of water right now, and it's going to have another piece on top. But essentially, it releases a scented vapor.
Do we know what that scent will be, or is it change, or?
So another way to think of the whole show is that everything here is a prototype. So if you do read the wall text, which you can do today, you can sort of get a sense of maybe where ultimately she'd like the ideas to be. So we have a variety of oils here that we're using, but in theory, the scents that could be used for this would be produced by a sort of photobioreactor system, such as the one we have over in the back, which we will get to. And so originally, we were talking about, can we actually release hormones, that will, nothing scary, but yeah, anyway, we decided it was unwise. But the idea is really because the olfactory system is the only one of the senses that connects directly to the limbic system in the brain. There's a very powerful association between scent and sort of memory and emotion. And so that's what this is tapping into. So there'll be a diagram on the floor that kind of keeps people standing back. And then we'll stick to kind of a gentle swinging of this. Gentle swinging, yeah. Okay, so this is the pendulum. Any questions about the pendulum? But you can see here, actually, just before we get to your questions, so she cut these. So it says, from trust to fears, from joy to tears. And then I'm gonna clean it up a little, but I do think it will stay because it was tilting a little. So just remember that everything is a prototype. Everything is a prototype. So not, these are all mock-ups for, something that would be industrially produced or produced at a large scale or professionally fabricated. And this is, yeah, no, go ahead. What was your question? Yeah, so all these elements are 3D printed, and then the frame is like laser cut steel. Yeah. Probably to her studio. To her studio. I mean,
What's the question? I missed it.
oh, like, that's a really good, question. I think this particular piece is a little more of like a show piece, but some of the other ideas are more like could have more real world applications. But this is so we're very much in the like this is sort of the dream state of things. Yeah, yeah.
Does that shape up there have any kind of meaning?
So that is actually supposed to have wings that will glue onto it. I think it's just sort of a decorative element to get people interested in what's going on here. And we're going to try to sort of add some visual interest, maybe with some lighting up here, just so people walking by will be enticed to come in. Yeah. We can head over to the PBR corner, the active laboratory. Yeah. Okay, let me work my way in here.
It's the slime corner.
Oh yeah. So everybody, watch your step over here. I think you're all good. You can sort of fan out. So these are our photobioreactors, all of these. So these hanging pieces, as well as these capsules, this piece here on the pedestal, and the long crocheted like scarf-like thing that's on the floor that will be hung on the wall. These are all systems that are designed to circulate algae, and then that algae the idea, right? This is not all happening in the ICA. Here we're growing and circulating algae, and the idea is that the skylights are helping the algae to grow along with these lights and some salts and things. But the algae, in theory, the algae produced by these various displays would then be used to create lipids and proteins that could be used in the making of biodegradable plastic alternatives. And we actually have a little sample piece. We're supposed to get a nicer one, but so far we have this. But you can sort of see, it's like a balloonish kind of plastic, and so we might kind of stick that up on the wall for people to see. So the algae can produce like the lipids, the proteins that ultimately can be used to produce a lot of useful things and biofuels.
So Jordan, are these separate machines or are they all connected to each other?
They're separate. So
Like these are separately from these.
yeah, each separate element is connected to a water source. I can wait. It's like just for like 3 minutes. Thank you, Jeff. Sorry. Yes. So they're all attached to, they may be sharing a water source, but they all function individually. Like they're not connected to each other.
So are they doing the same thing at different stages or the same thing in different ways? Like
It's essentially they're doing the same thing in like in different forms.
Okay.
So they
that's
look
doing the same
different.
thing as this, but
Yeah.
it's different.
There's, yeah, although these may be the only ones that are ultimately growing algae. Like, we may, just for the sake of maintenance, we may just sort of put chlorophyll in the water and make the others look green, but, you know, which, you know, you can say or not say. It's not like a secret, but I think, you know, since we don't have a lab set up to actually do anything with this algae, it doesn't really make sense to have like tons of algae growing in here. So I'm like, and leaking. So probably only a few of these will actually be growing algae. So this whole area essentially will all be functioning. Everything in here will be functioning the same way. So it'll be circulating water and air, and we'll, you know, the display will be wonderful when you see it next.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jordan. I'm just anticipating having to explain this.
Don't worry. This is good practice for me too.
So, okay, so are these like speculatively doing what we say, or are they actually doing what we're saying they're doing? Like, is this
Yes.
like an actual application, or is this just like how it might work?
So, okay, so these work. Like, they spin, you know, water flows through the way it's supposed to in these and in these.
Okay.
These ones are actually growing algae.
Okay.
Like, we've like seeded all this algae and the algae is growing here. You know, are we going to make a biodegradable plastic alternative out of this algae? I don't think so. I don't know how to do that. But yeah, so but this is, you know, you can think of it's like a prototype for a system. But I totally understand it. People absolutely want to know. I mean, I would want to know too. So, and then like it's a little TBD. So there are the pieces that Jeff is working on in the back, the red baskets. Those are just going to have water in them because the red, like, it doesn't make sense to put algae in them because the light doesn't get to them. This, and then I think this piece and the long piece that's on the floor that will be hung on the wall will just have like just water, algae here.
So the red pieces, the copper colored pieces, they're non-functioning? Do they function the same? They don't get the light? What's the purpose of them?
So they function. So okay. Another important element, I guess, that I should bring up is that the red pieces are basket woven. The long piece on the floor is it knit or crocheted? Can you tell? Any knitters? Someone tell me the difference. Crocheted. Right, and then these are made in a different way. So essentially, you know, she's bringing, and these were made in Turkey. All the woven pieces, everything besides the capsules was produced in Turkey, where she's from. And so this is a way of working with artisans in Turkey and using, these sort of very common craft practices to bring them, you know, both into the realm of art, but also into the realm of science, and sort of thinking if someday we're able to produce, you know, algae in our homes to use as biofuel, like which of these models would you want in your living room? You could think of it that way also.
And so do we know how they're gonna change, what they're gonna look like?
I mean, I don't think they're gonna look super different. More bubbly, less bubbly, more green, less green. It's not gonna. I don't think it's gonna be super dramatic.
What's the material of this capsule?
Glass.
That's glass, okay.
Yes. So people need to be very careful. We need to work on. You know, we're gonna kind of mark off the floor and put up a lot of do not touch signs. But as EGs, you know, if you see people, people really shouldn't be getting too close. They really shouldn't be walking between. Again, we have to sort of, as I trip over everything, we have to clean up the cords and sort of figure out how people are going to move around. I think that pedestal is too big. It's probably not going to stay there. But just, there's a lot of fragile things in the show, unfortunately, so we might just need people to be kind of extra vigilant.
Is there any significance to the shapes of the stands? One, and then two, are these formula things going to stay? Is there any significance to those?
Okay, so the stands, I mean, yes, in the sense that this is sort of, it's very much in the style of how Pinar draws. They say, so this says, life capsule, your future is biodegradable, grow, harvest, repeat, Yoldas Labs. So these are, these are made for the show. They're supposed to, they reference organic imagery. They have kind of an Art Nouveau sensibility to them too. The idea is just to sort of mirror the function in the form, and to bring decorative elements into this kind of equipment, really. And I mean, these capsules, like, we bought them. Like, some are from Target, some are from like fancy furniture stores. And then, she printed these bands that connect them. And then that's where the tubing enters. Yeah.
What are these glass?
So these are acrylic and
And are those tubes?
yeah,
round
and silicone tubes woven.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she's sort of showing the different ways that you can grow this algae that's artistic and it's also functional for the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. So, I mean, because like in the text, basically, and I didn't even know this, but there's a California algae, I don't know I say it here. California Center for Algae Biotechnology at UCSD. And so she's worked with some of these professors to get the algae, and they're genetically modifying algae. But basically, there's a whole industry looking into what algae can do, right? So it's when you think of how we grow crops for fuel, algae sort of it grows where we don't need space for current agricultural processes, right? So it kind of like fills these gaps. And if it's produced at a large enough scale, it also traps CO2, and so it could be used to clean the air. So there are all these really great potential uses, and so this is sort of, it's like just bringing all of that into a space where people wouldn't necessarily be familiar with that kind of technology or applications. Any other questions about these? No? Okay. Let's go see the kitty. Okay. So this is also this is going to have a whole, like, all the kind of rugs and pillows that you see over there. This is going to have a seating area with rugs and beanbag chairs, and the idea is, you could sit on the floor. The sound is in the headphones. We will, we'll go over sort of how the whole exhibition functions. We'll go over it with VE and can explain more later or send instructions. But this, just so you all know, because I can show you now, this is where the headphones are plugged in, and you can actually, we're going to leave the volume set, but if somebody comes and requires a higher volume, you can actually change it here. So yeah, we will go into that. So this film is called The Kitty AI, and it's one of the older works in the show. So I should also point out, almost everything in the show is brand new and created for the exhibition. But this is an existing film made in 2016, but I thought it was a really timely moment to include this kind of speculative investigation of AI controlling our lives. So this is a film that features the Kitty AI, and the Kitty AI is the first artificial intelligence, like, politician. So the film tells the story of the kitty and the kitty's origins and their ascent to power, essentially. But the idea is that it's 2039, which which is not that far away. And we've gotten to the point where AI is responsible for controlling basically all aspects of our urban operations. So AI is, we're self-driving cars, it's controlling waste management, and then the kitty essentially is created to be a politician that lives on your phone and has the emotional capacity of a kitten. So it can do what no current politicians do, which is that it can love you and care about you, which is kind of, in a lot of ways, the one of the sort of crux of Pinar's work is this line between kind of where the human and non-human begin and end. And so, and for her, that lies in the capacity for emotion and for feeling. So when we think about, artificial intelligence and technology and sort of what separates that from people, that essentially is emotion, affect. So effective computing is a major influence in everything that she does, and so this is her. This is an invention of a character who's crossed that threshold, and now can give us what AI and what politicians can't. So you can hang out and watch this. If we can also put the sound on, so maybe everyone can watch together. Yeah.
So this is like an overall sort of utopian view of AI. Like this is like a best case scenario.
Well, it's not very utopian if you watch it. It's a little both. It's a little of both. Like, I don't know. I guess that's a really interesting question. I think when you watch it, I guess it depends kind of how you feel about AI. I don't know. Like, do you want your political leaders to live on your phone and, like, I'm not asking you, but.
Just in the heart kind of thing is the idea of it is like benevolent kind of.
I would say yes, but I think she does a really good job of sort of teasing out the discomfort as well. So I would say definitely, like, stick around, watch it. We can put the sound on so that more than 2 people at a time can watch. Hmm?
Sorry. But I just wanted to add on to that.
Yeah.
You say, so she's not presenting the speculative perfect solution. She's
No.
presenting something so that we can kind of get a better idea of the nuances and kind of think about that.
Yes. So I would say, like, part of her practice, and it's repeated in the Artemis video that we'll see next, is, she also, this is more like in the realm of, I would say, like, science fiction. Like, she's creating these stories that exist in the not so distant future, but that sort of rely on speculative design, or technological advancements that are on the brink right now. But this was made 8 years ago, and so we are now at a point where AI is a much bigger part of our everyday lives than it was then, and ever before, really. So I think it's interesting to kind of, to keep that in mind when you're watching, and and just, yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, I'm sure that might come up.
Yeah.
Is this scripted or actually generated by an AI?
No, this was 8 years ago, so there was no ChatGPT. So this is her script. Both of these are her scripts, and it's also her manipulated voice narrating. Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, is it always going to be in Spanish there?
Well, the subtitles are in Spanish, but the audio's in English.
Gotcha.
Yeah, sorry, it's in the headphones.
It's very paternalistic, the subtitle, like what it's saying. Yeah, it's super paternalistic, so it's not very, yeah. But it's sweet too, kind of.
I know, so you're like, I've watched it. I get it. It's a lot of things. I mean,
Like, I wonder, because we're going to have 8-year-olds look at it, like how it will look for them for something made that is as old as they are, like whether it will look current or really old, or like how, like I can't imagine that until I have one in here. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But like, that's really interesting. That it's that
you should
old.
definitely watch it. Also, I mean, I think she actually really wants her work to be accessible to children, and like obviously kids are going to be very attracted to this because it's cute, and there will be a seating area, and this will be like the only place where people really can kind of sit and touch things. So whatever's on the floor, they can touch. But it is kind of it's heavy content wise. So I think you will watch it and decide kind of like how much time you want to spend with it, depending on the age of the kids.
Is it gonna have a warning for the gore and the?
You can tell me what you think. I would say, I mean, there's sort of that like, there's like a very stylized image of like blood, but I don't know. I'm not the best at knowing.
And it also talks about like semen and J.D. Ballard and yeah. I'm just putting it out there.
Well, in order to hear it,
Yeah.
we would have to put them on. So maybe we can just, as engagement guides, we can maybe come up with some language to just mention to parents, and then you can give me feedback on how people are responding, and we can let me know. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, or we can sort of. I mean, I really appreciate this feedback. Like, I'm not. This is great. I wish that I had thought about this sooner. I haven't had time to think. But yes, I mean, if we think like, I would love if you all want to watch it today, and we could think about, does this? Should we say like, kids 12 and over, or like, because we've run into this with a lot of shows. And we've had sort of different permission levels, and we don't want anyone to be sort of forced into encountering something that they're not comfortable with. So we want to make things opt in, and obviously, there's subtitles. So yeah.
I know that in the classroom I worked with kids who are really sensitive, and it's always just telling them, like setting the expectations. It's not like, oh, you can't watch it or you can't
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but just like, just a trigger warning or whatever. Like
Yeah.
this might, there's this and this, and watch it if you want. Don't.
Yeah. No, we'll develop something like that. I'm like looking at Katrina and Carla. Yeah.
So, I think I want to understand, so what this is made 8 years ago, her speculation on what AI might be or do, okay? And the 2 headphones, you're right, they look like kids' things. And so parents are apt to sit kids down and go, oh, look at the kitty. So only 2 people can listen at a time, right?
Yeah.
And that's English, it's not going to be broadcast.
No.
At all.
No.
Okay, so only people who can read Spanish are gonna really know what that is saying. So
Yeah.
that's but how do I say it? How do I present this?
Is it possible to play it without the headphones?
Yeah, is it?
It's like if you brought into class.
Yeah, because it would be impossible. With 2
Well, yeah.
headphones. So
Yeah.
like, is there a way
2
we
at a
can play
time.
it with
Yeah, we'll just need. I don't want to. Yes, we would just like unplug headphones, but like it was playing before. I just am not the person with that expertise, but we will make that available to you.
After the walkthrough, maybe we can come back.
Yeah, and we will figure out how to play it without the headphones. Yeah, let's do that.
How long is the film?
Oh, it's like 12 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. Let's keep going. Yeah, maybe walk around. Sorry. Yeah, so this is going to be.
Designed to be very soothing and innocent. And
Yes.
that's probably part of the idea is to kind of lure you in and then sort of
I think, well, I mean, so I think as far as the kid friendliness, like I don't know how much she reconciled like the content with the cuteness, but I do think the idea that, So this says, for example, and this is, I think, going to go up on the wall. This says vote, right? So the idea is that it's propaganda a little bit, right? Like you are being enticed to vote for the kitty, and so it's also like, I mean, when you think about the internet, we think about cat videos, even if you don't necessarily watch them, right? Like it's such a thing. And why is it such a thing? It's like they make us feel good, right, Katrina? So, that sort of, seduction, I think, is very much a part of what's happening here, right? Like, I think after you watch it, it'll become clear. I mean, I find it like funny and dark, and also cute. Here, we can put the sound on here, but first I guess I will explain. So this film is related, and just be careful with these tables. I can kind of talk about these things, I guess, in tandem. So Pinar has an ongoing body of work called Genetically Modified Gods. And so Artemis is one of those gods, and there will be different sort of manifestations. There's some other ones here that are going to be displayed on the genomic table, which is this sort of archipelago of tables, as she was calling it. I like that phrase. So these kind of connected but not connected display tables that are going to be showing kind of various sculptures and objects that inform her thinking and also the work. So the genetically modified gods are kind of her speculative engagement with gene editing. So technologies like CRISPR, which is, I don't know, 10-ish years old now. So this is the gene editing technology that allows you to go in and actually modify DNA or RNA to, ideally for benevolent purposes like curing diseases, treating genetic defects, diseases, creating better lives for people. But, there's always also the more sort of insidious side of, eugenics, designer babies. So these are not babies. These are not embryos. Okay, people are probably going to think that, and people might get upset. These are, and over there too, I mean, these are all, I think those are molecules. But there are other orbs that have little figures in them. Like these are speculative, like alien. These are more alien. The rest are gods. And so each of these gods, she has a book that it's like it's a PDF, but it's essentially short stories on each of these gods. I will ask if I can share that. And so she basically has created backstories as well as the sort of scientific like formulas for each of these gods. So she would tell you, Artemis's parents are, this god and that god. These 3 genes were modified to result in like superior strength and superior intelligence. So she, instead of like modifying the DNA to do this in humans, she, as someone who grew up in Turkey near the ruins in Hierapolis, is very steeped in Aegean mythology, has thought, well, what's so different between human gene editing and the way we created gods and goddesses, throughout sort of human history. So, right, haven't we always kind of been trying to create the ideal human? And there's an Artemis sculpture that should actually be arriving today. Another sort of figure similar to one of these guys. These are 3D printed. These are all 3D printed except for the orbs, which are etched glass. So some are resin and some are like the filament, the plastic filament. Okay, any questions about genetically modified gods? Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes, those are, and those are very significant.
Is it just going to be these 2 tables or more than?
So there's also this, which I'll explain, and then there's another table,
Okay.
that's not up yet.
Is this part of it?
Yes, she wants there to be a microscope. There may be some actual DNA also. I don't know exactly how that will be displayed.
Completely like on a computer sheet.
Yeah, but there will be a sculpture of this figure that's resin printed, a small one, like similar in scale to these. Okay, so I'll unmute this so you can hear Artemis's story. If I can figure out which is the unmute button.
So will this be on all the time running?
Just like those damn sneakers you're wearing.
Oops, can we rewind
I
it?
was genetically engineered to be.
Wait, I don't want to give it all away. We'll wait till we get to the beginning, it's short. Yes, I think this is going to be on all the time. It's like a 2-minute loop, but we can, I don't want it to be super loud, so we can, oops.
After the Internet collapse.
We can work on that.
And when something goes wrong with the loop, who do we call?
Me.
Okay.
And partly because I was quite sheltered. It's
Here,
not
let's
like
see.
I grew up in a remote village in rural Kyrgyzstan or something. Quite the contrary, I spent my childhood at Nike headquarters in Portland, Oregon. Electric cars, servant robots, Wi-Fi controlled helmet runs. You know the drill. I was sheltered particularly because I had 7 parental units hovering around me all the time. 2 moms, 2 dads, 3 grandparents, all scientists. Moms were biologists, one dad was a nutritionist, the other a movement scientist. All grandparents were psychologists. My family made sure my gene-environment interactions were perfectly optimized. We lived in a large house, which was part cozy vernacular chic, part gene lab. You may be wondering, 7 parents living in a Nike lab? Who the heck is she? Well, here comes the twist. Are you ready? I am a Nike product, just like those damn sneakers you're wearing. I was genetically engineered to be the best athlete the world has ever seen. I was genetically modified to win. Hi, my name is Artemis. I was born in 2039, a year before the third pandemic, a year after the Internet collapse, a decade before Earth's oceans completely went hollow, a decade after genetically modified trees took over Amazon. Of course, I had no clue that any of this had happened or was happening. Partly because I was quite young, and partly because I was quite sheltered. It's not like I grew up in a remote village in rural Kyrgyzstan or something. Quite the contrary, I spent my childhood at Nike headquarters.
So that was the loop.
2 questions.
Yeah.
Hack patriarchy, is there a sort of thing behind that? And also the deer. Like, is there some reasoning there?
So Artemis is the goddess of the hunt. And so that's why she has a bow and arrow and a deer. So she's like the goddess of the hunt, also the goddess, I think, of nature. I mean, if you Google, there are lots of different sort of responsibilities that Artemis has, and some overlap and some don't, but definitely the hunt. Hack patriarchy, yes. So, I mean, overall, Pinar's work is very much engaged in a sort of techno-feminism. I do think a previous version of Artemis had a different 4-letter word on the helmet, and so this, I think, is making it more generally appropriate.
The H and the A do look a little different from every
Oh,
other.
ooh,
They're
actually, I
very
think,
similar,
uh-oh.
yeah.
Oops. Okay, well, there's that.
Yep, there it is.
There it is. Scratched on over it.
Yeah.
But I guess is there like is the scientist somehow going to like overcome patriarchal forces? Like, is there a like a sort of cohesive statement about it, or is it more just like an embellishment?
I think, well, I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, based on Artemis's backstory, right? Artemis is a Nike product, so I don't know how. So, okay. Let me see. It's like where is it Artemis' story and where is it Pinar's story? Because I think that statement is very much a kind of Pinar kind of including that in just a little bit of like a signature in her work. But Artemis, so in the longer story, she eventually like escapes Nike lab when she realizes who she is and her power. So that's not in here, that's in the written written text. So to get a little deeper into the Pinarium. But yeah, I think, eventually she rebels, so I guess. What?
It ties into the sort of greater story
Yeah.
of this character.
Yeah, which I don't think is like completed, but there some of that is extended in the written version, and I think some of it I've also like just talked to Pinar about. Like I'm not totally remembering what's in there, but yes. But eventually Artemis escapes from Nike, and like once she becomes conscious of her identity and the power she has. That was a very good question. Any other questions about Artemis? No? Okay. So kind of walk over here. This is not up and running, but this is a piece called Fool's Fowl, and it has its own wall text here. These are actually going to be, they're motorized, and they're supposed to be motion sensitive. I had to leave early yesterday, and these arrived after I left. Supposedly they do work. I'm just not. It's not configured, obviously. But essentially, these are gonna like look like they're sort of breathing. These are like chickenless chickens. They are kind of. It's like so. Actually, I will. She has this great little quote here. She calls it biological minimalism. It's imagine that instead of actual chickens, which are living and thus provoke sympathy, and we care about animal cruelty and cage-free eggs and chickens having a good life. These you aren't required to care about in the same way. They're essentially chickens that have been produced to like egg and meat production. So they satisfy, our humanitarian concerns and our like capitalist industrial concerns. And the idea is that, I think she says like every urban dweller, could have one of these in their kitchen, basically. So instead of, this is a speculative, this is an older work too. I'm not sure if it's 2019. I think it's 2019. Say it up there. Okay. But essentially, this is a good example of just sort of like a speculative design and speculative biology product. So when she conceives of this, she thinks about, all of the systems, all of the biological systems that would need to be involved for this to function. How would it eat? How does it reproduce? If it does, how does it expel waste? But essentially, this is a prototype. It's obviously, it's not a living creature. It's mechanized. But this is the idea is that this is like, well, what if we could reduce an animal to just the parts the humans really want? And so it's there's a lot of humor, there's a lot of irony in the work, and a darkness. But I think overall, what she wants to do, as somebody working in this field of speculative design and biotechnology, is think of how we can use these technologies toward a more compassionate future. And a lot of that, I think, comes out or is delivered in the critiques that are embedded in the show as well.
So just a question. So
Yeah.
these are alive, but they're not sensate. There's no brain or what?
Yeah, so in theory, nothing is alive except for algae. Nothing in the show is actually alive except for algae, and we'll see how that goes. But no, so these would be like living tissue, but not sensate. Yeah. So they would not be. They wouldn't be happy or unhappy or feel pain. No central nervous system. Let's see.
She talked about it in a talk that she gave that was online
Yes.
recently, and I'll see if I can find that and I'll share it with you guys. She talked about like if you could re-engineer a chicken and take away the parts that weren't necessary
Yes.
for meat and egg production, which would be the head and the legs. So she's
Yes.
re-engineering these guys without the head and the legs, and then the idea is that she was imagining this future where we all have one of these on our countertop.
Yes.
That just produces eggs for us, and we don't need to feed it, and we don't need to worry about how it's going.
Yeah, so it's in that talk, and then also on her website, she actually has a little diagram that, if time permitting, hopefully she'll draw on the wall here, that kind of shows the difference between an actual chicken and fool's fowl. But yeah, you summed it up really well.
Is there some, because they don't have legs, but then the table has legs.
Yeah, so because it's cute. The table's an egg, also. It's just it's the chicken table.
I mean, I think this is going to be a great show for engagement guides, because I feel like all of this stuff is an introduction to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so many conversations to have with this. So even that, like the chair, what does that mean? Why is that there? Is this good? Is this bad? Is it scary? Is it?
Well, it does seem like there's some judgment, right? Since it's called fool's fowl. Is that meant to, like, it seems to me like
It was interesting in the talk, because the vibe that I got from the talk was very much like, this is exciting. This is
Yeah.
what's possible. Let's embrace it. It does seem different now here. Like, so I'm wondering, I don't know, but I think it's interesting, the idea of like, we're so driven by commerce and by technical advancement, that there's no philosophers, or that we're not including people like that in these decisions. So from what I've seen so far, that's a question that I'm seeing. Like, what other voices should be on the table? But I don't know. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. But when I saw the video, it seemed to me that she was all gung ho, and she was like, "Look what's possible. We can do this." And we can do
Yeah. Well, I think it's both, and so the genomic table, which unfortunately there's not a whole lot to talk. I mean, I can tell you about it, and the wall text for it is there. This might be confusing for people, just so you all know, because she's going to be doing some wall drawings on this wall, perhaps during the course of the show. So TBD, there'll be more info on that. But the text for the table that's in the middle is over here. But yeah, I think so. Fool's fowl. Firstly, maybe somebody in this room knows this. Is that like it's like a term, like it exists? It's because when they translated it into Spanish, it was translated to like the chicken that lays the golden eggs. So I was like, oh, maybe it's so maybe it was like maybe it's like it has like a oh my god, like what's the word, like a fable, or like a folklore kind of.
They're also not chicken feathers.
You can let her know.
It's taxidermy birds. It's 2 chickens, a pheasant, and a partridge.
So, and those are exactly the kind of things that visitors will say.
Yes,
they will 100% say that.
Like, what's that about?
Yeah. Well,
So, is this the title she gave it then?
So she gave it Fool's Fowl.
She did.
Yeah, in English, which I always thought was just kind of a clever, like, I thought of it as just being like alliterative and clever, because this is like, it's kind of it's a chicken, but it's not a chicken, right? So it's fooling you, it's tricking you.
Yeah, but
Like,
it leads you to think, like, people say that she's making a comment. Right. And yet, these are her words,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Which isn't really making.
No, I think it's just, I don't think there's anything negative implied here, and I see what you're saying about the title. I personally didn't take it that way. Maybe it's because I learned about it in sort of a conversation where she was super excited about it. I mean, this is so the link I was trying to make between this and the genomic table is that to your point, Carla, like a lot of what she also wants us to think about is who has access to these technologies and how are they being used. So, you know, if the wealthiest class, if the elite have access to these technologies and are using them to live longer or make, you know, cryo chambers to preserve themselves, like that's not super equitable, right? Why aren't we using these technologies to make food sources that can be, you know, mass produced and live in the kitchens of, you know, the average person? And so the genomic table is supposed to be this sort of, you know, look into, it's like a curated look into kind of her science mind. It with a lot of reference to DNA, to the 20 amino acids that, where did she go? There, that you know, build all of the proteins in the body, and think about, you know, how can we make this technology more accessible to more people? So the text even says, you know, that the elite are experimenting with these technologies, whereas the average person can't get the gene therapy that they need to treat their cancer. And it's so, and everyone is literally, she's like, you know, pull up a seat at the genomic table and let's have these conversations.